Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. BetOnline.ag. Go to BetOnline.ag where the game starts. Put in promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. You get a 50-cent bonus. If you want to take fantasy to the next level, go to Underdog. Go to the app or go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Put in USC LAFB for a $100 match. Madman, happy Monday. It's like I just saw you. We're
rolling. We're rolling, Coach. Happy Monday
roommates.
to you. You know, it's hard to believe though. We obviously just had one yesterday morning, but I don't know. It feels like a lot of time has passed. I don't know. You know, since yesterday morning,
it did just
feels like there's always something with USC football. So always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Well, a lot of things happened yesterday though. Yes. a lot of things happened between then and yesterday. It was the first day of football. Tyreek Hill gets Scotty Scheffler outside of the stadium. We get a commitment. James Earl Jones died. R.I.P. Yes. James Earl died. 93 years old. Lived a good one. You can't complain about 93.
No. I can't complain about 93.
That was a good one. We found out that the Browns suck. Who played last night? Oh, last night was a good game.
Yeah, I mean a tough one for us here in LA with with the Lions in overtime over the Rams, and felt like the Rams lost half their team. Puka Nacua on IR, so tough start for the Rams.
You know what I'm most excited about? That the Raiders lost.
Hey, look, the return of Mr. Harbaugh, the Chargers looking like a ground and pound team. If you only have to throw the ball 23, 24 times with Justin Herbert, you're on to something here. So don't sleep on those Chargers. Harbaugh's won everywhere he's gone, so we'll see how that shakes out.
Do you think, real quick question, I know it's kind of off topic. I'm not even a Chargers fan. I view them as the Clippers and the Angels, but right. I think Herbert's a really good quarterback. Do you think if he doesn't throw the ball a lot, do you think he stays, or do you think he goes somewhere? Or do you think he goes somewhere else in free agency?
Coach, I think he stays. Obviously this is a USC show and fans tune in for our analysis on USC, but I've talked with Ryan on other shows on the LA Football Network about this, and I'll say it in 30 seconds. I wonder about Herbert's ability to process a lot of information. It really just seems like the struggle with the playbook with the Chargers the last couple of years actually mirrored the struggle with the playbook I think that Mario Cristobal had with him at Oregon. It just seems like there needs to be sort of an oversimplification. I don't know if it's still kind of unnatural for him to go through reads, or it's more in the preparation of being able to process information. But there seems to be a bit of a gap there for whatever reason. So I think the fact that this becomes a run-first offense actually frees him. And with that cannon coming off a play action, I think the Chargers really have something. And I think he's going to really enjoy this role where he doesn't have to carry the whole franchise on his shoulders.
I got you. Just a quick question.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk SC football. We actually got the news during the show. We couldn't break it.
Yeah.
On three beat us to it.
Well, we got our top sources, that we have kind of let us know about it, but said, hey, listen, just slow roll it just a bit. Yeah. And we wrapped up the show and it was already broken, but it was.
Yeah. Ty Jackson committed to the University of Southern California, 2025 linebacker, 6'1", 200 pounds. Loxahatchee? I'm going to go with Loxahatchee. But there's a T in there.
Yeah.
But that spells Hatch E. Lox, Loa.
I'm going to.
Hatch E.
Yeah, Loxahatchee. I think you did that well. Yeah, okay. Loxahatchee. Yeah.
From Loxahatchee, Florida. For sure, tackler, nose for the ball. He plays very fast. We're added to the linebacker core now. Big get, 4-star commit. Somebody said, I saw on 3 have him as a 5-star, because I saw something that was supposed to that he was a 5-star. So he's one of the top recruits in the nation. let's put it like that. And he's coming to USC. I'm comfortable with it because we got a lot of linebackers leaving. So now we're starting to fill up the linebacker room. I'm also comfortable with it because this is a September commitment. And like I said before, I don't take any commitments before that July 4th deadline. So this is after the July 4th. This is a December commitment. He can go play. He came to Utah State. He saw something that he really liked, and now he's here. Now we can start building our linebacker. We keep our defensive room really good, and keep recruiting. Love this recruit. I love this ad. This is just Mason Cobb all over again. You know what I mean? He'll be a great Will backer. I can't wait to see him perform. Man, what do you have on him?
No, Coach, you said it really well. And, Coach, it actually reminds me, it feels like your approach to recruiting, which I completely agree with in terms of the timeline, you would have made such a fascinating contestant on, like, The Bachelorette. You're like, listen, save your roses for the early rounds, okay? I'll gladly accept the rose, but I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm only going to take the roses seriously when I'm in the final 5, when I'm in the final 4, the final 3. You give me the hometowns, you give me the overnight dates, then I'm going to take it seriously. I'm not taking it seriously first 3 rounds. And so that's how the coach approached recruiting, which I completely agree with. Well, Coach, this is a great get with Ty Jackson. You mentioned 6'2", 205 from Florida, number 1 inside linebacker in this cycle, 44th on the ESPN 300, and just the ideal supplement now. The reinforcements are coming. Obviously, we've talked about the first 2 weeks of this season, just the outstanding linebacker play with Mascarenas-Arnold, with Gentry, with Cobb. Guess what? All 3 of those guys are moving on this year. So you need to sort of bring those reinforcements in a significant way, and Ty Jackson is doing that. And I also think, Coach, this is sort of that domino effect that takes place. Look at the juice in the building on Saturday night. He commits right after that for an opening game, 102 degrees in Los Angeles, Utah State, 8 p.m. So many reasons for it to be maybe a lighter attendance, even for a home opener. You go in there 69,000 strong. I'm sure he observed that. He witnessed it, saw the juice in the building, saw Aaron Donald, saw Dwayne Wade. And then, of course, seeing the first shutout by this program in 13 years. I mean, there's just sort of a palpable momentum here that he wants to jump on. And again, this domino, one brick by brick is starting to really build some great momentum. So terrific get for D'Anton Lynn. Ty Jackson, I think, is going to fit right in, as you said, really kind of stepping into that Cobb role. And the show rolls on in a very significant way.
The only thing that worries me, and it's not in a bad way, he's really, really green. When you look at him play, like his stance, he has like the staggered stance, and he just kind of runs and goes and tackles, which is good. He's a football player. I'm not taking anything away from him. Now, once you refine him and teach him how to do things the right way and make him a very good football player, this is a guy that has a very high ceiling, and I want to see that elevator go up and see him have a very successful career at the University of Southern California. So I love the great get. We're starting to replace and not rebuild. Remember that. We're starting to replace and not rebuild. Nick Saban never rebuilds. He just replaced. And we're getting in that mode. Like, we need to keep on replacing and not rebuild to end up making a very, very dominant dynasty of the decade. Let's shoot for dynasty of the decade.
There you go, Coach. Why not? Let's think big. Let's think big right now. And you said it best. I mean, those, that phrase, I think, really started kind of in the early 90s, with like the Miamis and the Florida States. Hey, we don't rebuild, we reload. And I think that's sort of where this thing is going here, Coach. And couldn't be more excited about it. The sky's the limit here moving forward. And you mentioned, obviously, there's some technique things that could be cleaned up. There's a little bit of polish that can be cleaned up. But the bottom line is he has the physical traits. He has the size. He has the speed. He has the strength. You can get him into the weight room, but there's an instinct. There's a quickness. There's reflexes. Those are the things you can't really teach. All the things that we talked about in terms of stance, in terms of, technique, you can teach all of that. I mean, just case in point, look at the USC defense in 2023 versus 2024. So that's where you get really excited. Hey, I want to be able to get the guys where their deficiencies are, the things I can teach. The things I can't teach, if he's already got, I mean, that's then makes a complete football player.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm happy for it. Let's keep reloading. Let's keep getting better. Great get. Good job, Coach Lynn. Good job, Coach Henderson. Another one in the book. Let's build that dynasty. Let's move forward. So let's go with the news that broke yesterday. And it's not terrible news. So yesterday the AP poll came out. I kind of mentioned like tomorrow morning we should be talking about SC being number 10. SC's just outside the bridesmaid, never the bride, right? There are some people upset about it. There are some people who say that they deserve to be number 10. And all I have to say to that is patience. Patience. Don't make the wheels squeaky now. You get what I'm saying? And I say this, don't make the wheels squeaky now, because when we do get the grease, we better keep that bearing lubed up. You know what I mean? Like we're fine. We started at number 23. We ended up at number 20. No, we ended up at number 13. We jumped to number 11. Like, it's a slow process. Let's trust the process. I'm happy with where we are. Like, we're starting to make national attention. And I think we're kind of like predestined for this, because week 0, Nick Saban kind of got upset and was like, yo, you guys stop. Look, all SC needs is a defense. Once SC gets a defense, they're a championship team. And once you get the blessing from one of the greatest coaches in college football, like, you know, there's a lot of move forward. I also say this. I believe in football gods and karma and things that happen and kind of aura thing. I think inviting Pete Carroll back and having Pete Carroll involved kind of puts a little bit of good juju on the situation. I really do. And there's too many good things happening and falling in our place that I think it's just because there's a lot of good things that have been done to make those things happen, which is karma around circle. But number 11, I'm good with it. I'm not going to go set the town on fire. I'm not going to be upset with the NCAA. We're in a good spot. The only place we can go is up, right? Because eventually, if we get to the spot where we want to be, the question is, how do we stay there? And it's harder to stay there, and it's way easier to go up. What do you got, man?
Yeah, Coach, I think, you know, to address your first point, first of all, you know, it is great. It is great to have Pete back in a teaching capacity. And then also the other piece of great karma, I mean, we got 5 at the Peristyle.
Yeah,
again.
5 in the Peristyle,
you know,
yeah.
So, you know, having both of those happen the same year, I think we're all very much looking forward to the day that Reggie runs out with the team here, you know, hopefully soon. Hopefully it'll be this season. I know there's some things with the NCAA that needs to get cleared up, but just the fact that the 5 is back where it belongs, and the fact that Pete Carroll is also back where he belongs, you know, in a post-NFL life, to your point, Coach, you know, all seems to be right with the Trojan football world for now, and we should kind of stop and smell the roses a bit. No pun intended, because, you know, you know, sometimes you take it for granted. I mean, I remember being an undergrad coach, and you know this very well. I mean, my 4 years there, it was 3 Heisman Trophy winners. We were 48-4. I mean, the last game was the Texas game. We win that game. It's the greatest 4-year run in the history of college football. We never lost a home game my 4 years there. And then, you know, you played immediately thereafter. And you know, the Rose Bowl streak just sort of marched on there with 3 straight more Rose Bowls. And you sort of get to that place where you're like, man, this is going to last forever. And then guess what? You know, you never know when it ends, and it ended. It ended in 08, and we've been trying to find it for the last 15 years. So the fact that we potentially could be on the cusp of another great run here, I think there should be sort of an element of gratitude, because these things don't come along every so often. Coach, in terms of the ranking, I know that I think there's sort of an argument to be made that, hey, you know, it could be a little bit higher. I'm actually good with where it is. And I think it's fair, because I think you have to sort of look at it logically. You have to look at it pragmatically. This is a team that coming into this week was ranked number 13 in the nation. Look what happened this week, right? You saw Michigan just absolutely get their, you know, doors blown off at home. And then you saw Notre Dame have this sort of shocking loss. So 2 teams lost. USC was able to capitalize on those 2 losses and move up 2 spots. Now, there's an argument to be made. Hey, maybe they could have even gone up as high as 9, because guess what? Penn State looked really shaky. You know, we talked about it in the previous show. 27-24, didn't even have the ball with 4 minutes to go. And then Oregon looked really shaky. I mean, down 34-27, needed a kickoff return for a touchdown to kind of stabilize that game a bit. However, I think the poll, the voters are setting a good precedent here, because you never want to start moving down in the polls after a win, no matter how impressive. I think you value a victory. And I think that, you know, it's only when you sort of lose should you sort of move up. So I think that's a nice precedence to have. And again, sitting at number 11, it's a 12-team playoff, so you're right there, and you don't really have to worry about this because you're in one of the two preeminent conferences in the nation. So as long as you perform within that conference, you're going to be in the playoffs. So this is almost cosmetic to a certain extent. And then B, you have an opportunity to sort of get into the top 10 on your own merits in a few weeks here with that Penn State game, and Penn State's sitting at 8. So I'm good with it, Coach. I kind of like the fact that the voters aren't penalizing teams so much for winning unimpressively. Now, if you go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row winning unimpressively, then you're going to have to slide a little bit. But I do appreciate the fact that they're prioritizing winning, and this is all taking care of itself. Let's not forget, 2 weeks ago we started 23. Here we are at 11. So it's been a pretty significant jump in just 2 weeks.
Just to argue your point, Oregon has not had an impressive win yet, and they have not. They only moved down last week.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
let's get Oregon out of there. Let's get Oregon out of there.
Here's what I'll say, Coach. Here's what I'll say is if you look, if you started the season without rankings, and let's say the rankings were this week, okay, this was the first week of the rankings where you say, look, first 2 weeks we want to kind of see where it all shakes out, who is who. You're probably, if it were me, I would probably go Georgia 1 because I think beating Clemson the way they did was a really impressive game. I'd go Texas 2 with how impressive they were at Michigan, and I'd go USC 3. Like, if you just went on in terms of sort of body of work, forget about where you were in the preseason, just first 2 weeks of body of work, I'd probably have it Georgia, Texas, USC.
Not Ohio State?
Coach, to your point, I think Ohio State, in my opinion, pound for pound is probably the best team in America. But again, they haven't played anyone yet, right? They played 2 cupcakes. So if you just go purely on resume and performance to that resume for 2 weeks, taking away any sort of preseason bias, I would probably have it just in terms of the results on the field, Georgia 1, Texas 2, USC 3.
Now, just to counter that, though, is Georgia that good or is Clemson that bad?
Yeah, I mean, that sort of remains to be seen. But, Coach, in fairness, we can sort of ask that question about LSU too, right? So,
true.
In fairness, right? Because they played a number 14 team, won 34-3. We played a number 13 team, we won 27-20. So, in that regard, if you're just kind of going, and even if you took the rankings out, so Clemson wouldn't be ranked, right? But just Clemson's is still a big name program. You come in and you beat a big name program by 30 plus. I think that holds a lot of weight.
No, I understand. I just
totally.
Just some rebuttal questions that people may
of
ask.
Course, Coach. You got to rebut, Coach. Come on now.
I just want to see something real quick because I think the only one there's one I'm not happy with. And I need to confirm something before I go. Okay, never mind. They lost to Syracuse. I was going to say Georgia Tech got moved out of the top 25, but they lost to Syracuse last weekend. Okay, so never mind. They belong where they belong. It is what it is. They got a long way to make up, but it's a wide open conference, and Miami kind of struggled a little bit this past weekend. So the hype might not be around Miami. We'll see.
Well, I think that was a big win for them against Florida, Coach. And I think, sometimes it's a little bit of that trap. Remember, we thought, if you recall last week, we thought SC was going to sleepwalk a little bit against Utah State, So that might have been their kind of, Utah State moment, if you will. Obviously, SC exceeded expectations, particularly on the defensive side. But we thought, hey, listen, late game, Sunday game, this might be tough on a quick turn. But credit to the Trojans for putting such a comprehensive performance on the table.
Which is a good point. That's a very good point that you brought up, because if this was a year ago, it'll be a struggle game. Yep. You and I both know that. If this was a year ago, we'll be 100% worried, and they're putting everything to bed right now. So that's a very good point that you brought up. That's an absolute great point.
Well, Coach, I mean, see, here's the thing also, right? Like, if this game was played last year, there was an unsung turning point in that game a little bit. Obviously it's hard to say, what are you talking about turning point, Madman? I mean, this is 48-0. This thing, we were coasting. It wasn't a game throughout. there was one micro moment, I would say. I'll call it a micro moment. If you recall, Coach, right at the end of the first half, right, we were knocking on the door. I thought Utah State did a really nice job on that 3rd and goal, if you recall. They brought 6. They had 5 guys right on the goal line. Miller threw it that underneath route to Zach, and Branch caught it, turned around, and just kind of got popped. Got stopped there. It was 20-0. Utah State was calling a lot of timeouts, if you remember. It was about 1:44 to go in the first half. Utah State was kind of setting it up where they had the ball with 1:44, and then they got the ball back at the start of the second half. And I thought that, just that micro moment with Gavin Meyer's tip, where Mascarenas Arnold got the interception. Because if you look back at that film, Coach, their receiver was kind of streaking open. That was about a 20-yard completion. And, if Meyer doesn't get his hand up there, that's probably a completion. Utah State's starting to feel really good about themselves crossing midfield. Obviously, it doesn't change the outcome in any way, shape, or form. But maybe Utah State goes down and gets a touchdown. Maybe they go down and get a field goal, and then they get the ball right back. And maybe they put you're feeling kind of differently about yourself if it's 20-7 versus 27-0, right? And yeah. There's a little bit of momentum there. But that play kind of sealed the deal, and then that first stop in the second half. But just think, Coach, last year, even if you jump out to a 20-0 lead, that's probably a bust. Utah State probably scores a touchdown. It's 20-7. Utah State probably comes back, scores a touchdown on the first drive of the second half, and now all of a sudden it's 20-14. And to your point, we would have probably pulled away late in that game, obviously, but much in the way some of those early games were last year, where it was a bit of a struggle into the third quarter, we were probably headed down that road again. So just the fact that this team looks so different, so disciplined, but that Gavin Meyer tip, I thought was a micro moment in that game that really kind of closed the door.
No, that is a very good point. And I'm happy you mentioned that, happy you remembered it. Also, we kept Barnes from running like crazy too.
Yep.
For some reason, he wasn't running like crazy, but we kept him from running like crazy. So, there's a lot of things that improved from year to year, and we're still watching and we're still building the list. But if this season does go the way we think, and we're going on a tangent right here, but I'll bring us back. But if this season goes the way that it's looked like it's going to go, our list for Lincoln Riley is going to be so much harder than our list was for last year for all the boxes he needed to check off. So much harder. Totally. So much harder to defend it than it is to win it. So much harder.
Well, Coach, let's be honest here. This is sort of what we were expecting in 22. When he came with the hoopla, he said, look, man, this is going to be the mecca of college football. A lot of bravado, a lot of hoopla, brought big expectations. And I think, it took a little while, but as the saying goes, right, Coach, year 3 is always a defining year for a great coach. And this is year 3 of the Lincoln Riley era. And so, you have year 3 and year 4 to really kind of prove it, right? If you can't kind of get it turned around, and we've said this a few times, Coach, by year 4, particularly in this age of modern college football, with the transfer portal, with, the ability to kind of get better very quickly, if you can't get it turned around by the end of year 4, unfortunately, you're either not an elite coach or you're not at an elite program, or both, So yeah. Like we talked about, he's kind of firmly in that year 3, year 4 moment now where we're expecting that step function jump. And through first 2 weeks, a resounding A for Mr. Lincoln Riley.
We're trying to avoid this year 4 at all costs.
Yep.
You know what this is?
What's that?
This is the thumbs up that was around the check last year on the field at Kyle Field. This is the thumbs up. Yes. We want to avoid that. We don't want another coaching surge.
Totally. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, let's move on. That was a good conversation right there. Let's move on. So for all you gamblers out there, and you're looking at the line, and I gamble too. I'm not passing any judgment, but if you're looking at the line, Michigan's line they're favored by 9.5 points. Now, I'm going to throw the disclaimer out there. For some reason, they're setting the lines way before the season, which is weird because when you think about it, LSU's line was set. The LSU SC line was set 3 weeks before the season. They're setting lines super early. Do you think this is just because they were assuming that this was going to be the same old SC team, this is going to be the same Michigan team, and we get 9.5 points? Because if we get the same team as last year, that makes sense. I'm taking Michigan all day. I'm gonna take that. I think Michigan covers. I can see a three field goal, or you know what I mean, like, or a 2 touchdown win over SC last year. This year, I can't see that. So I do see the line getting bet down, but like, I don't know why. Do you think it's because it was so early they're predicting it off of last year's performance?
Well, Coach, it's very puzzling because there has to be some sort of historical bias that's sort of playing in right now. I mean, it just has to be, because if you take a step back, Coach, and you just look at the results on the field this season, I mean, you see USC beating LSU and then pitching a shutout, and you see Michigan in their 2 games struggle mightily at home against Fresno State. That 30-10 final was so misleading because that was a 13-3 game late in the third quarter, early in the fourth. That was a 23-10 game, and Fresno State had the ball at about the Michigan 12-yard line with 4 minutes to go. They punched that in. It's 23-17, and Michigan's got to hold on. Instead, it ended up being a pick six that totally swung the score of that game. That was really a struggle. And then we saw Michigan just completely get dismantled at home against a team in Texas that is constructed very similarly to USC. When you talk about their quarterback play, when you talk about the offensive weapons, when you talk about the offensive mind that is Steve Sarkisian, when you talk about the overhaul also that's kind of taken place defensively, albeit not as extreme as it is at USC. What evidence do you have this season based on those performances to justify that Michigan is a 9.5 point opening favorite against USC? It makes absolutely zero sense. And everybody that I know, all my Trojan friends and whatnot, I mean, they are hitting that line as quickly as they possibly can, Coach.
Lock it in.
This just seems like an absolute steal because it just feels completely irrational. And what's even more sort of glaring is that Michigan still has one more game before USC. Albeit it's at home, it's against Arkansas State, but it's not even like both of these teams are heading into a bye where you've seen the whole body of work. I mean, God forbid what happens if Michigan plays and some of their top players get hurt. What does that tell you? So I just think this is sort of an irresponsible, irrational line that's taking place over here. But there is zero evidence based on what has happened in the 2024 season to justify in any way, shape, or form how can Michigan be a 9.5 point favorite against USC this season.
I can't tell you. So it's not. I will say this: it's not on Bet Online yet. This is on Bet ESPN. I don't know if we're allowed to say that. If we aren't, I apologize, Ryan. But it's not on Bet Online yet. So Bet Online does not have that game up yet as what I'm looking. So I don't. Maybe that's why their company is their betting platform is struggling, because they're legit giving away money. Like it's pretty much 10 points. They're not going to beat SC by 10 points. You know what I mean? Like if they do beat SC, it's 3 points, and the only reason why they beat SC by 3 points is maybe a little referee help, or it's just a bad day for SC. You know what I mean? Or the ball just doesn't bounce their way. Right. You know what I mean? Like things that are out of your control. Like so, but you're saying that they are that much better than SC. 10 points is a lot for that type of game. Yep. You know what I mean? It's not just a group of 6 school. Like this is legit. Like a blue blood versus a blue blood. This is history of college football.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like this isn't. And SC's playing really good, and SC's living up to their name of being SC, becoming a national brand again. Like that's a lot. 10 points is a lot. There's no way you could. It has to be. But if you want a little bit of Christmas money, go throw $1,000 on that. Yeah, because
for
sure. That's for sure.
And Coach, I mean, to our point, we're not suggesting that it's impossible for Michigan to win this game, right? I mean, anything can happen. It's 1 week. Look, SC could be feeling really full of themselves for the next 2 weeks and patting themselves on the back and not playing with a certain edge. Michigan's going to be really angry over what happened. Hey, yeah, absolutely. Anything can happen. No question about it. But to suggest that going into the game, The expectation is that Michigan is a 9.5-point favorite is what's so unreasonable, right? I mean, like, it could be that Michigan, look, turnovers happen, things happen. This is college football. We've seen the strangest of things happen. I mean, Coach, we saw Stanford as a 41.5-point underdog come into the Collie and shock SC. We saw Appalachian State go into the Big House and shock Michigan. We've seen all kinds of things over the years. So to tell me that, hey, could Michigan beat USC by 10? Sure, anything can happen. You don't know about injuries. You don't know how guys are feeling. Obviously, there's a randomness to all of this. But to go into the game and say, we expect Michigan to win this game by 9.5 points is absolutely outrageous based on what you've seen in terms of body of work and evidence in this 2024 season.
So here's my question. Does it get bet down? And if it does get bet down, what does it get bet down to?
Coach, I think folks are going to be pounding this line so hard that this might be the most violent swing of a line that we may have ever seen. I mean, this thing could go from plus 9.5 to minus 4.5. I mean, by the time of kickoff. I mean, honestly, I could see this thing swing 14, 15 points because it's just kind of ridiculous, where we are right now in terms of what Michigan has shown on the field versus what USC has shown on the field.
I say 6.5.
You still think SC will be a 6.5-point dog?
No. It's going to swing to SC being a 6.5.
6.5, yeah. So that's a 16-point swing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know in the pros you get 3 just for being home.
Right.
And I think in college you get 4. Don't quote me. Do not quote me on it in the comments. I'm ballparking here. Don't quote me on it. But I know in pros you get 3 points for being at home. I think college you get 4 or maybe 6, one or the other. But so they're just saying I say 6.5 will be the spread. Realistically, by the time it kicks off, I can see, like you said, 4.5 points. Like, I can see people Michigan, they're not going to cover 6 points. They might get Michigan by 3 just because of the aura of the game. So I could see kickoff being about maybe 4.5, but I could see it swinging at one point next week. It's like 6.5 points for sure.
Totally. 6.5 makes you a little bit nervous, right? Because it's one of those things where you're not saying that the outcome is decided, but it's one of those where you got to play it in garbage time, right? Like, let's say SC's up 13, right, with 8 minutes to go or 6 minutes to go, and Michigan comes down and kind of gets a sort of a garbage touchdown with 2 minutes to go, right? That goes from 13 to 6, right? So that's where the 6.5.
One of those backdoor covers.
Those backdoor cover, or backdoor misses, right? So that's where, those numbers kind of make folks a little bit nervous. So that's where I think it'll swing to SC minus 4.5. But that's still going to be, a 14, 15-point swing, Coach. I mean, because this is ridiculous. I mean, we talk all the time in the stock market about, how do you design a portfolio? How do you design investment strategies, whatnot, hedge funds, things of that nature. The assumption is always you have a rational investor, right? This is the definition of an irrational investor. Whoever has sort of set this line at plus 9.5 is I'm sorry to say, irrational.
No, and trust me, and like you said, I'm buying the SC stock on this one. I'm guaranteed. Totally. I'm buying the SC stock on this one. I'm guaranteed to get a return on my money, and I know for a fact that I'm gonna get a return on my money, and I could probably go retire off of it if if I'm looking at this stock. No, I'm just saying, this is it's so unreasonable that you can't even fathom it. It makes no sense to anyone. And I'm trying to see if the wise guys even, and I call the wise guys like the people in the Vegas books, but I'm trying to see if the wise guys are even that irrational about it, or if it's just the Bet ESPN. You can't even get BetMGM. You can only bet for this week. So I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in such a bad situation. I'm taking that lock all day. All right, if you're going to give me the 9.5, I'm taking the 9.5. I'm taking it. And I know SC's going to cover, and you have to fortitude that money. And then guess what? Next thing you know, we're going to have a Ponder just got laid off. So who's going to be the next person to get laid off? Because there's no way they're going to be able to afford another sideline analyst. We might lose Salters off of
Coach,
this.
Here's another way to think about it, right? is you're favoring SC. I'm sorry, you're favoring Michigan by 9.5. Excuse me. Michigan scores 6 points against Texas until the final drive. I mean, so you're giving Michigan a bigger spread than the amount of points they scored in the first 55 minutes of that game. So it just I don't know what's going on there, Coach.
You know what, though? And you're going to hate this part, but this is the part where analytics and data is not your friend.
Right.
Because sometimes analytics and data overanalyzes and gives you too much data, and then you get this number, and you're like, makes no sense. But
yeah, because
that's what the numbers say.
No, it's a great point, Coach. Because when you have a small sample size, and I'm trying to sort of justify this in some way, I mean, I think we've made it very clear how we feel. But it's an interesting point because sometimes when you have a small sample, right? We've got 2 games. Data needs samples to really be credible, to be predictive, to be able to classify effectively, to be able to cluster effectively. The more data you have, the more your algorithms will be successful in terms of an accuracy standpoint. And the only thing I can think of is, did Michigan winning 30-10 over Fresno State, just looking at it from like a bottom line standpoint, did that swing it? Is Texas just considered like a supernova team because of the fact that they went to the playoff last year and the fact that they're preseason number 3? And is there some question about the USC win over LSU when you look at how LSU played the following week against Nicholas State? And at the end of that game, Coach, LSU only had 64 yards rushing. Nicholas State had over 165 yards rushing. And so when you start sort of, putting those data pieces together, maybe, it's like, was that win that impressive? They, on the other hand, this team kind of beat, Fresno State by 20, but, they just kind of lost to one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. Like, I'm reaching here, but that's the only way you can sort of justify this from sort of a mathematical standpoint.
All right, let's switch schools here. Then why is Oregon favored over Ohio State by 1.5? And
I can't answer.
You get
what
I'm saying? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, they're doing something wrong. Like, I'm gonna go take that too. I'm gonna lock that in. Like, that's easy. All Ohio State.
This makes no sense. But again, it comes down to, when you sometimes have these early season lines and you're pounding the analytics really hard with small data. Like, for instance, look, there's an argument to be made with Oregon. And again, I'm trying to sort of, argue it on the other side. You and I kind of know where we stand here. Oregon beat a Boise State team. The Boise State running back that first week had 267 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. So, mathematically, you're kind of saying, hey, man, any win over like a back of that quality, from a numerical standpoint is sort of a quality win, right? And then when you sort of look at Ohio State, obviously crushing their first 2 opponents, but it was kind of cream puff teams. And then you overlay the fact that Oregon is at home, mathematically you start putting some things together and that's probably where you sort of end up. I don't agree with it at all. Just the eye test tells you, between Ohio State and Oregon that Ohio State should be a clear favorite in that game by 4 or 5 points.
You could legit put a 2-team parlay together with just those 2 teams and put $1,000 down and come up with a lot of money. Stupid amount of money. But yeah, definitely. You got anything else before we wrap it up and get out of here?
Coach, the moral of the story here is that, you're just going to be laughing all the way to the bank, so.
I'm not going to do that because I respect that's another story. I don't want to see anybody lose their job at ESPN. A couple of people. So
and also I think, Coach, to your earlier point, like, hey, the football gods seem to be smiling on USC right now. It's all good karma. You don't want to do anything necessarily to jeopardize the good karma,
Right. So definitely put it. Matt, man, it's been a good one. It's been a great. Thank all the fans. Thank everybody. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. If you like any other sports, if you like the Rams, Chargers, or the other team, and future the Lakers and the Dodgers, go to LAFBnetwork.com. If you're in a fantasy, go see my man. I got in trouble for saying his name wrong. He keeps saying I keep saying his name wrong. Can you help me say his name? It's Amar, right?
Yeah, it's Amar.
Amar. Okay, I'm sorry. Go see Armor and our man
there you
Spencer
go. There
Chad
you go.
Decide.
That's the Indian way to say it.
Okay.
So yeah.
The Decide
Amar
guys.
is like, coach is too cool for school, man. So
go see my man Armor and our my man Tad Decide, the Decide guys. They'll put you right for your fantasy football season. That's all at LAFBnetwork.com. You can go to LAFBnetwork.com or you go to YouTube and see it and check it out. Man, it's been great. It's been good. Let's do it again later on this week.
Yes, sir.
You guys want to go? Bet Online Salute Podcast. Live free. Fight on.